afternoon, everyone, or good morning, or good evening, depending what time zone you're in. In this webinar, which is a joint webinar between Openbox and Squirrel, we're going to show you how to build and visualize a financial model in Openbox and Squirrel. Show how those two tools can work together to help you build and use and demonstrate and impress your clients with a great financial model. The sort of structure of this session is I'll do a bit showing you the Openbox part of the process, and then I'll transfer over to Donald. He'll show you the Squirrel part of the process. I think about 10-15 minutes each for those, and then lots of time for questions, discussion. So what we're going to do is show you how, from scratch, to build and visualize and interpret and display to your clients a model for a software business. Donald and I both work for software businesses, so we thought we might know a little bit about that. And we wanted to just show you how you would make one of those in Openbox and how you would use it in Squirrel. And I think that's, when you're asked to create a model, you need to make a good one, but you also need to demonstrate it to people, show it to people, get them to be able to use it and understand it. And I think the combination of Openbox and Squirrel should be good for both of those things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and walk you through the building process in Openbox. And then once that's done, I'll hand over to Donald, and he'll take the model I've created and show you the visualizing it and using it in Squirrel. So without further ado, let me just flip to my get my screen on. Now, can everyone see my screen? Donald, can you see it?
Yep, I can see that, yeah.
You can see it. I'm assuming other people can see it too. Okay, great. So what I'm going to do in the next 10 minutes is just walk through building a model for a software business in Openbox. Now, Openbox works with Excel, and so the way to get there is within Excel itself. You see my screen here. I've got Excel open, and then there's an Openbox menu. Various options here. Let's not worry about those now. I just tell Openbox I want a new model. And what Openbox will do is it will ask me some questions about what sort of model I want. And this is kind of stage one of what we think of as the three-stage process with Openbox. Stage one, you decide what sort of model you want. Stage two, you pull in bits from previous models that you think are relevant. Components, modules, call them what you want. Little bits of modeling good practice that you can slot into your model. And step three is you customize it. So as we all know, if you look at businesses in one sector, they all have a lot of similarities, but they're all unique. And so just having pre-made components that you kind of click together like Lego isn't enough. You need to be able to customize stuff to fit your client's business. I will show you how to do that, step three. Anyway, step one. What sort of model? So I'll have a basic model, please. I'll have a monthly model. Let's say I want it to start on the 1st of January next year. Financial year end in December. I'm going to make it in pounds, and I'm going to run it for 3 years, so 36 months. Just some very basic information about my model. I'll click OK. And what Openbox will do is it'll grab that template for me from disk and display it in the Openbox window. Now, I know some of you have seen that window before, but I know many of you won't have done. And so I'm just going to very, very quickly explain what you're seeing here. So this is the Openbox window. It's outside of Excel. And if you look at it from left to right, what you're seeing over here on the left is you're seeing financial statements. So you've got a P&L up on the top left here with revenue, cost of sales, net revenue, and so on. It's fairly standard stuff. You've got a balance sheet here, very simple balance sheet, and a cash flow as well. So an Openbox is driven by reports. It's what's the purpose of your model? What are you trying to calculate? And then over here in the middle and on the right, we've got all the calculations and inputs. And each of these gray lists is effectively a sheet, if you like, in your final model. So you've got this one on the left, unallocated, stuff you haven't put anywhere yet. You've got input sheet, you've got time sheet, assets and debts, the standard sorts of stuff that you would have in a financial model. You've got working capital, so on. Note, we've got a built-in check. they check balance sheet balances, which we'll come to later. So that's great. And if you've, the next question you might ask is, what's all this coloring? Well, the coloring, if you've used the FAST standard, follows that. So things in orange are placeholders. There are things that aren't in the model yet, but need to be. And crucially, in this model, there's no revenue. We'll sort that out in a minute. There's no cost of sales and so on. The yellow ones are inputs. So some of these inputs are very standard, 12 months in a year. Some of them are project specific. And then white boxes mean a calculation which is in the model and you've specified. So for example, if I click on depreciation, you look up in the formula bar and you see I've specified a calculation. And the layout of that calculation is designed to be quite similar to Excel. So it's an if function. If the asset life is 0, then depreciation is 0. Otherwise, divide the value of fixed assets by the asset life to get depreciation. And we can customize these, as we'll see later. So that's what you're seeing in this screen here. And one thing we can do is we can zoom in. So let me just zoom in a bit on depreciation. And you can see the precedence and dependence of depreciation. So you can see it depends on asset life, periods per year, fixed assets, and it drives fixed assets. That's all well and good. So I've got my template model, that's step 1. Step 2 is to bring in the parts that are common to models of this type. So this is a software business, and so we're going to bring in a component to calculate the revenue of a software business. And the way I do that in Openbox is this button here, import component. And it brings up a list of all the components that I have in my disk here, at once for assets, construction, cost benefit analysis, and so on and so forth. But actually I want revenue, and I want an MRR for a SaaS business. Sorry for the acronyms, monthly recurring revenue for a software business. So I click on that, it shows me in this window here, a component that calculates revenue. That looks good, so I'll bring it in. And then the next question asks me as well, how do I want to link that to the rest of the model? This component calculates revenue, which is this box here. I've got revenue in the model already. And so Openbox says, are those two the same thing? Should I link them? The answer is yes, that's fine. And in fact, everything on the screen is okay, but that's just an example of the sort of decisions you have to make when you're bringing these in. So I click OK. In it comes, asks me, there's some inconsistencies in formulas. And in it comes. And if you've been watching closely, you'll see revenue has disappeared from unallocated, which is kind of my to-do list, and it's moved over here. So in this SaaS revenue box, I've now got a revenue calculation. And if I zoom in on it, zoom in, you'll see it's calculated based on customer numbers and monthly revenue per customer, which is a typical way that software companies would calculate their revenue. And it drives debtors. So that's good for revenue. I'm going to do operating costs as well. I'm going to do that slightly differently. I'm going to ask Openbox to suggest how I might calculate that. It's given me a couple of suggestions. I think basic operating cost, that looks good. Bring that in. Same window again about merging, cost of sales, operating cost, that's good. Click, there we go. Again, it's asking me where there's an item with 2 possible formulas, which one I want. So that's fine. Then again, we've got a new sheet here, which I'm going to call operating cost. And there we go. So now I've got the revenue in, I've got operating cost done. What I'm going to do is going to start setting some values. And that's the question people always ask at this point. How do you get the inputs in? So this business with its has operating costs. It's got some salaries and rent, utilities, and other stuff. So what I'm going to do is look at the salary inputs here. I've got the chief marketing officer, come back to that one, chief executive. So that's he costs that much per month. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that input is actually fine. So I'm going to send that off to the inputs. Chief technology officer, again, his salary is already there. So I'm going to say, right, send that placeholder off to the inputs, developer salaries, and others. That's fine. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put in a couple of levers. So this is where we really make the link with Squirrel. So suppose your client has said to you, I want to check a couple of things. I want to see what happens, whether it's worth me hiring a marketing officer to help me build my business, and how will the cost of them versus the sales they bring in make sense over time. And also, do I need to raise the money? So when, if I go out to the market and I'm trying to raise some investment for this business, if so, when should I do it? So we put in some calculations that will allow you to see the results in this model. It's a simple model for this example. Don't make any investment decisions based on it, but I hope it shows you the point. Let's check the chat there. Great, thank you very much, Aaron. So, Chief Marketing Officer. So his salary, he doesn't get salary until after he's hired. So I'm going to say his salary times CMO hired flag. So I see somebody's raised their hand there. Hi. Hello. Is that? Hello. Oh, it's gone down again. All right, no problem. Let's carry on. I'd say, please, if you could keep questions to the end, that might work best because we've got a lot of people in the session. Okay, so the CMO's salary, we're going to give him $6,000 a month. And I'm going to tell Openbox that's actually a constant. So I'm just going to flip this little arrow and I'll send it off to the inputs by pressing Control-Shift-I for inputs. And then there's the date the CMO is hired. There's a flag here that says whether he's hired. I'm just going to tell Openbox this should be a flag. And it's a flag that will apply on a specified date. So I tell Openbox that, and it converts that placeholder into a flag. And then I've got a date here, and I'm just going to call that date CMO hired. Okay, so there's my CMO flag. So I put in the CMO there, and now I'm going to say, well, we're going to have some marketing spend as well. So marketing spend, we're going to say that's a percentage of revenue times marketing spend as percent of revenue. The reason for this will become clear in a minute. So notice as I'm putting in text here, telling Openbox that I want these things to be in the model, it's adding them as it goes along. So it's saying, well, you don't have this already. Do you want to have it in? Okay, here it is. So marketing spend as percentage of revenue. Let's say we're spending 5% on that. Make that a constant. Notice Openbox recognizes as a percentage, send it to the inputs. Okay, so that's good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell Openbox how new customers come in. And this is where we really see the marketing and CMO spend. So I'm going to say new customers is, this is the number of customers we have now. So it's sort of growth rate times if the CMO has been hired, CMO sales boost. So when you hire the CMO, that boosts your sales by a certain amount. And spending and marketing, that helps your customer growth too. So there we are. So I put that in, CMO sales boost. Let's say when the CMO comes on, they increase sales by 10%. So that's good. Keep going. So I also want to include in my model some key KPIs. So I'm going to add a new sheet here, call it KPIs. And I'm going to add something called average customer growth. Okay, and I'm going to say that is the final value, special Openbox function of customers, minus the opening value of customers, the power of third, because it's a 3-year model, minus 1. I'm going to add another KPI here called net retention, which is 1 minus customer churn divided by new customers. Okay, so I put my KPIs in. I also wanted to put in some investment. So I have something in my model, placeholder called equity injections, the amount of equity that goes in. And I'm just going to say that is a certain investment amount times raised flag. We use flag a lot in Openbox. The investment amount is just a number. So I'm just going to make that a constant here. I'm using shortcut keys in the interest of time. Investment raised flag, tell Openbox we want that to be an actual flag that applies on a specified date. So in it goes. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set up debtors and creditors because I've got cash outflow, cash income. So we could add special components for that. I'm going to keep this super simple and just say you have 30-day creditor 30-day terms and debtor 30-day terms. So cash outflow is just the value in the previous month of operating cost. And cash income is just the previous value of revenue. So revenue in the previous month is your cash income. Yeah, you get paid in 30 days. Just keeping it simple. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some of the inputs. And Donald is going to flex these all over the place. So I'm not going to worry too much about them. But look, CMO sales boost, 10%. Press Control Shift I because I'm happy with it as an input. Off it goes to the input sheet. Let's say we have 100 customers at the start. Again, happy with that as an input. Customer churn, let's say the churn at 2% a month to start with. Revenue per customer, 25. Gross margin, so 85%, kind of typical for a software business. And I think that's us. Okay, so I'm now going to tell Openbox to make that model. Here's the kind of moment of truth. So what I'll do is, first of all, it'll ask me for a file name. So Openbox Squirrel webinar 2011. And then I'll do a whole lot of checks on the model. So it'll say, some things aren't used. I'm just going to get rid of that. Acquisition cost, not used, get rid of it. Ongoing cost of sales per customer, not used. Average customer growth, that's one of our KPIs. I think I'll keep that. This is always the slightly nervous part where it goes off and does its thing. So now it's just converting what we did to a spreadsheet. It's warning me that I've got some hard-coded constants in some of the formulas. Not great practice. We're just going to ignore that for now. It's just creating the workbook. Off we go. Bit of tidying up. So what it's doing is it's translating the calculations and inputs I put in here into a spreadsheet. And then that spreadsheet can go into Squirrel for Donald to do his magic with it and show you how it can be used. And there we are. So here's our cover sheet, contents page with inputs. Sorry, it's not supposed to. Okay, here we are with inputs. And notice that we've got KPIs in here, one sheet for each grey list in the Openbox screen, and a balancing balance sheet. So that's good. There we go. Now, what I can do is I can shut and we'll close this down now. That's our Openbox's work is done. We've got a simple model that we can play around with. And I'm going to pass it over to Donald now for him to do exactly that.
Excellent, excellent. So one of the things before I just start, and this will sound like I'm something to do with Openbox, but actually I have nothing to do with Openbox. But I used to be a financial modeler many, many years ago when computers were still steam driven. And I would have given my eye teeth for a tool like this. It just does so many things. I mean, what Iain has done you couldn't, it would take you hours to do that, even if you had a complete idea of what you're doing. But the high level overview of the model, the structure it imposes, and just the ability to do things quickly and less prone to error is truly remarkable. I think I would, anyone who's doing financial modeling as an ex-financial modeler, I would recommend that. And I promise you, I'm not being compensated in any way by the Openbox guys to do that. And so, but having got a model like that, so Iain said that's quite a simple model, and for Openbox standards it is, but it's still quite a sophisticated sort of 3-year monthly model, annualized up to years, with financial statements and sort of all sorts of things you can do with. But there's a lot in it, and one of the issues with models a lot in it is they're great for running scenarios at the low level. But what happens when you want to communicate that to other people and communicate it in a way that they engage them, but also allows them to continue to ask questions about it, either in your hands or potentially in their hands? And so that's where Squirrel takes over. So what you can say, I'm going to start, so if you like, the other way around from Iain, I'm going to show you the end point of our journey with Squirrel, so you can see the sort of thing that you can create. What you see here is based on an Openbox model that Iain sent me, which is very similar and possibly identical to the one he's just created. And the rest is all done in Squirrel. And I'll take an empty Squirrel model and build it up and show you how easy it is to get to something like this. So what I'm going to do is you can actually see the spreadsheet down here with all Iain's various bits and pieces in it. But we'll look at the output of this. So if I go and look, preview this is as an end user would see it, and that's either you demonstrating it or an end user coming to your website and seeing it and playing with it themselves. So all the sort of things that you saw Iain put into his model are here: the monthly churn rate, the monthly recurring revenue per customer, the marketing spend as a percentage of revenue, this CMO hire date, and that investment date. And here is the outputs. They're taken from the report pages that Iain showed you. These ones here are taken from the monthly new customers, taken from the monthly operations tab. Cash is taken from the monthly profit and from the monthly balance sheet. But if I don't like that view, I can come up here and say, well, actually, I want to look at tables. Sometimes you want the detailed numbers. Here are annual profit and loss and cash flow statements, again, just generated directly out of the numbers in Iain's model. Then we've got these 2 KPIs. Presumably they're important, so they're highlighted at the top with a bit of color coding in them. And so it really gives an overview of the model that you can sort of talk to people about. So I'll say, look, this is the growth of customers. Look, this is where we need a cash injection. We'll have someone else detailed numbers down here. And you can put whatever you want on here, and we'll see that process in a minute. But the real magic happens when we look at this and say, actually, well, what happens? Someone says to you, well, actually, what happens if our monthly churn rate is 4%? So I can take this and just turn it up to 4 or 4.1, and then that recalculates the whole model, the model that Iain sent me, all his calculations. I've not added any calculations. I'm just using what came out of Openbox. Or I might say, well, what happens if monthly recurring revenue per customer goes down? See, it makes a change. Obviously, it doesn't make a number of new customers change, but it does make the cash change. Or we could say, actually, and you can see this jump here. That jump is in January 24, and that's because that's when we hired that new CMO. If we put that in January 23 instead, then you see that you get that jump earlier on, so you can model that. So you can change any of these. If you run out of it, we've run out of cash a bit too early, so June, put this back to not December 23, but maybe put that in 1st of June 23. Then see it updates, and now we don't run out of cash, so you can start doing modeling like that. One other thing we've got, or 2 other things we've got here. The first thing is you might want to compare different metrics here in your charts. So this is new customers, but I can change it to say, well, actually, I want to look at revenue. How does revenue track there, or perhaps profit? And we can see this is a heavily loss-making business, or maybe compare profit with the new customers, which are different from the total customers, obviously they're new ones, and independent of churn, but depending on growth rates. So if the model's okay, then that shouldn't change the new customers, and indeed it doesn't. But if I increase marketing, customers spending money there, I get a much steeper growth there. So those are some of the things that I can do. So you can see how I might want to take this and show it to someone, answer their questions. It's just a really nice way of presenting what you've already done without having to sort of go through the nitty-gritty detail. One other thing we've done here to this is, or I've done here to this, is this box up here, which allows me to do scenario management. So what I can say here is I want to go to, I can load a particular scenario, maybe go to my base scenario, or go to a higher scenario. So what that means is that if I'm coming into a presentation with this, then I don't want to have to say, well, here's the base scenario, but I can change all these levers. Just wait a minute while I change all these levers and get to my high level scenario. We can say, actually, no, this is about hiring a CMO earlier and increasing the drive to marketing. So I just click hire and I see my hire one here. It's not, it disturbs me that it's so negative there. I think we can do that instead. And so you can see that sort of, and then from there I can see there. So I've got the higher here. If I go if I go to lower, you see these numbers changing as I do that. So there are different scenarios that I'm running, so I can do this. But even from any of those scenarios, and someone said, oh well, what about if MMR, we put our prices up to 37? Then you see what happens here. So really, we are really pushing the model, and we are genuinely pushing that model that Iain wrote. It's not something that I have somehow simulated here. It is actually the model that Iain showed. And I talked about presentation. So here I've got it, and but I can share this with other people. This is it sitting here inside the Squirrel Designer, which is where we'll spend most of our time. But I can give this to people on a web link. So you just publish it, and we'll look at publishing later on and how you do that. And I can publish to the web, and then if I send this link, anybody who has that link can see it. I can password protect it and all those things. You don't want to share it or make it expire at times or pull it down if it's no longer valid. But it's really very simple to share if you want to send a link to someone so they can play with it. Or alternatively, one of the things that we see a lot of people doing, particularly with financial models, is run it in PowerPoint. So here this is my the same model I just showed you running on the web, running inside Squirrel. This is it running inside PowerPoint. So I put my very imaginative title is "This is in PowerPoint," and so we're actually inside PowerPoint. And I can do all the same things. I can say what happens if my monthly churn rate goes up, or I want to see my tables, or indeed I want to load a scenario, or do any of the things that I can do in the other, what you just saw me inside the Squirrel Designer. And indeed, if I hit F5 here in PowerPoint, I get full screen. So this is now in the flow of my PowerPoint presentation. So I'm sort of talking about the background to my model and all this sort of stuff. And then I say, and here is the model presented. And when I'm live, I can do the same thing. So I don't have to go out of the flow of PowerPoint. I can just make it part of an interactive part of my presentation, which is a really nice way of presenting these really sophisticated models, but in a presentation where you've abstracted all the complexity, and it's just the levers that are important and the outputs that are important that you can see, but there's enough flexibility so that people can ask their questions and you can really get the point across. So that's if you like, that's the end point of where we end up with something like this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and say new. So I'm going to start from the beginning. Now, the first thing that I would do here, well, let me just show you what I'm working with. So this is the model that Iain sent me. It's called Simple SAS version 5. It's got all the things that you saw Iain there, right through to, if I go to the end, it's got that KPI sheet with the KPIs on it. And so I've got everything in here that I need to build my model. And so as I say, I don't have to recreate that in Squirrel. All I need to do is to say spreadsheet import, and then I import that there. Now I'm not going to do it. I would do it. I mean, the trouble is it takes about a minute to work itself out. It's a bit boring to watch. So what I'm going to do is once it's actually in Squirrel, it takes less time to load. So I'm going to load this up. You're going to have to trust me, although we have a free version available for download on our website, and you could do this yourself. So if I am trying to cheat you, then you'll find out very quickly. But here, this is it. All I've done here is pull in this spreadsheet, and you can see all the things that you saw before that Iain created inside Openbox. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you some. I'm not going to build the whole thing because that would probably take me sort of half an hour or so or more, and it would be very repetitive and you'd get bored. But I'm going to show you the key concepts of how you go from this blank canvas and this spreadsheet to the sort of thing that I just showed you. And so the most obvious thing in here is the charting. So we had charts on our main on the finished model. So I'm going to add a chart in here. And what I can do is I can just say, okay, so this is going to be, I'm going to make this customers. And I'm just going to type in a title. I don't want to have a subtitle. And in the data, I want to auto size the bars. And then I'm going to tell, well, what do you want to chart? So I'm going to say, well, take my values. So I said this was customers. So I'll go into operations and we'll see that's the number of customers there. Just go straight to the right and confirm. And there is my customers. Now it's doing one series for each of those. So I just need to switch the layout. And hey presto, we have customers over time. I need to tell it what its labels are. So I come in here and say that the labels are these titles up here. So just take that and go over to the right and hit confirm. Now that you can't see those, so I just need to go to the x-axis, say those should be vertical, and I'll format them as dates, and just want the month and the year there like that. So I've got my thing there. Now I don't want those, the X title and Y title, we know those are months, so I don't know those. So I'll turn off that title, close down this, go to the Y axis, turn off its title, and then here in these, maybe make them numbers and put a comma separator in there. So I've now got that's my chart of customer growth over time. Now, obviously, adding charts on Excel data is not the world's most adventurous thing to do. But as I said before, and I use this phrase a lot, the real magic happens when I start to interact with it. So what I can now say is I can say, well, I want a slider. And that slider is going to control the monthly churn for customers. So it's going to be a percentage. I'm going to want it to go from 0 to 20. I'll put it in steps of 0.5, so 0.5% there. If I style this here, I don't want the 0 and 20. I know what's going on there, so I'll take off the min and max. So I just get a slider here. And then what I do is I say, right, this value is going to map into the input here, which is the monthly customer churn rate. So I just put that in there and say confirm. Now, I might also want to see what I've set it to, and I'll get that in the tooltip. I might want to see it here as well. So again, I can say, well, I want to see it. Let's put a little piece of text in here. Again, I can bind to the same cell in the spreadsheet. I can give that a format. That's just going to be a percentage. I'll do that to 1 decimal place. So now I've got the output of the slider there. And now if I preview this, as I say, and when you preview it, it packages it all up and hides away the spreadsheet in the way that an end user would see this. And so now I can say, I'm going to take that and slide it out to there. And so what happens if I go to a customer churn of 13% or down to 6%? And that is genuinely exercising this underlying model, because it's all the formulas that were in Iain's spreadsheet, and we can see that. So if I go to my operations tab in here, and then I come down here to the where is it? I didn't see the customers. So yeah, the customer number. So this section here, if I go into debug mode, which is a great way of diagnosing what's going on up here, you'll see that if I change this, notice the numbers down here all change. So it is really exercising the model, and it's rerunning all those formulas, but then translating that into the outputs and then putting those outputs into the chart. So the fantastic thing about Squirrel is that there's very little Squirrel stuff to learn. You've learned sort of like 75% of everything you would need to know about Squirrel, which is really when you bind things to the spreadsheet. Some are outputs, some are inputs, some are inputs and outputs. But when you move the inputs, the outputs change, but they change according to whatever you've put in the spreadsheet. And so and so what I would do here is I've got these controls. I've got like the date pickers you saw. I've got the value inputs that saw the amount of the equity injection, radio buttons, menus. You can create a really nice UI, whatever you want, and it's all sitting on top of that spreadsheet model, so that you just exercise you change the inputs, which pushes them into the model, and then you can see the outputs in your your charts or your tables or whatever. And these tables here, so the tables, I just use a data table. It replicates the formatting from the spreadsheet, and that's how I did those two data tables that you saw in the finished model. But you can go the one step further. And one other interesting thing to think about in terms of Squirrel is we've got these KPIs that we calculated before, or we calculated, the Openbox model created. And so what I might say is I want to put these in some headline capacity in my model, and they're not quite right here, but I can add to the spreadsheet here. So I can say I want the text of this KPI to be equal to, and then I just use spreadsheet formulas. So it's going to be equal to that. And a space, and I want this formatted as a percentage. So I'm going to use the text function, which again you'll all know, text of that, and then 0.0% is my format string. Close my brackets, and hey presto, I have the text that I want to show here. So I've combined two bits of text here. Again, as I did before, I just say, well, I'm going to put that up here, and I'm going to put it with and I'm just going to bind it. So I bind this text now to this dynamic piece of text here. I'm going to make it 22. The text color, I'm going to play around with this a bit. So the text color is going to be white and the background is going to be black, just to make it stand out for now. But actually, having got that, and then as we see here, if we come and preview this, again, because it's participating in the Excel model, there's nothing else I have to do other than change the slider, and we'll see that the growth goes from 106 to -14 depending on my churn rate. But I might want to sort of say, well, what's the color of this? And I'm going to say, so I could type light green. So I take the color of this text. I could just type the code for light green in there, but I'm going to bind it to this cell. Oh, and if I could spell it, it would be better. Light green. So that's now light green. But what I want to do is I want to change the color depending on what's going, whether it's a target or not. So I'm going to set a target here, and the target is going to be 100%. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to say is, again, it's using spreadsheet logic. If this is greater than this, then light green. Otherwise, red. So it's currently light green, but if it goes below 100, then it will go red. And we see that if we come here and I go into debug mode, then I go up here, hey presto, it's gone red. So I've got dynamic color changes. I could change the bars on here. Sort of, but the fantastic thing is when you get this concept that it's all tied to things that are happening inside the spreadsheet, you can do whatever you want. So to have some much more sophisticated traffic lighting on different bands, all you're doing is putting in more spreadsheet logic, which is something that I'm pretty sure everybody on this call already knows how to do. So Squirrel is really an extension product, and it really leverages the knowledge you already have about the about your spreadsheet and your spreadsheet skills and formulas and all that sort of stuff. And the one last thing I want to do is, because so that's just changing a color on here, but we had a thing before where the charts were showing something different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I'm going to sort of the chart here. We'll actually have to come into design mode. So I'm going to quickly go in here and say the chart, and this is customers, and I might want to change it into cash. I just switch between customers and cash. And what I'm going to do is, depending on this cell here, that's customers, and I'm going to, that's my input cell, so I'll highlight it in yellow. So what I'm going to need is I'm going to need I'm going to change where this chart is pointing at. So I'm going to need a dynamic set of data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my operations tab here, which is where the currently the customers are, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy it over there. So just copy and paste it into there. Now it's in A because it's been adjusted for its time, but it really needs to be J. So there's that there, and then I can extend this out. I think I need to go as far as AO or something like that. So go a bit further, copy it to the right, just as you would in Excel. No, it's AJ. So I can, so out my model is to there. So I go there. Now to simulate this chart, I'm just going to say that's equal to, and then go back to my operations and then come down and say customers, it's that number there. And I can, again, copy that out to the right. I need to format it a little better. So there you go. That's my customer number in there. And so I can repoint the values here. Nothing's going to change. So I'm going to go and repoint that at this new set of data. So in the KPI there. So now what you'll see is, oh, actually, and I also want to take this title and make it dynamic and put it on there. So what you'll see is if I now, actually, no, one step more to do. I have to make this formula dynamic. So what I'm going to say is, this formula is equals switch, which is, again, a new but still standard spreadsheet function, switch on H1. And if it's customers, then I want that operations. Otherwise, if it's cash, then I want to go to my balance sheet and I want to pick up my cash there and close that off. So there we go. It's that's now switching between those. H1 obviously needs to be absolute, again, just natural spreadsheet metaphors. Copy that out to the right. Now what we'll see is if I change this to cash, it probably has to be, it's not going to work because it's case sensitive. There we go. So that's a cash chart now, whereas it was a customer chart before. Now what I can do, and the final thing we're going to do before stopping and going for questions, is I can say, okay, I want a drop down on here. And that drop down is going to be driven by text, customers, and cash. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert back into the spreadsheet model the label the user chooses, and I'm going to put it in this yellow cell here. And the selected item is going to start as the label in that cell, so everything ties up like that. So now what I do is I come and preview this. Then I can say, I don't want cash, I want customers. So I've got a dynamic, that's how I did those dynamic charts on there. And all I'm doing is the same thing again and again for the slider, for the KPI or the drop down, is all I'm doing there is I am I'm just taking components in Squirrel, putting them on the canvas, and then wiring them to spreadsheet logic. And it really is all driven by the spreadsheet and your spreadsheet skills. And then to get it to share with people, I just click on the preview button, so I then see my model as people would see it in the real world. And then I can publish it. So I just say I want to publish it up to the Squirrel Cloud. And we can call this the Openbox webinar, and I publish that. And that is now in my catalog. Well, when it publishes, it's going to be in my catalog of available online projects. And so it's publishing up to the cloud. I see my catalog here in my project manager, and it appears the top left one here when it comes up. So there it is there. I have to move it to live. So when it's published, it is it's in draft, so it can't be shared, but I move it to live so it's shareable, and then I can just share it. So that link you saw before, so if I copy that web link and go to my my browser and paste it in, then that will show me. And you've just seen me, you've seen me take the Openbox model, create this simplified version of the model, and then run it through, publish it, and now make it available here with all those capabilities that you saw from before. Of there. And this is the final thing. If I come back to here, I can copy the PowerPoint link, and as a final to show you how easy it is to put it in PowerPoint, what I will do is I will delete this one from here. So move that, delete it, so I can say insert a new, oh, it's easier to get it from here, a new Squirrel presenter. Take that link in there, and hey presto, I'm done. I've now got this model interactive in PowerPoint that I've literally built in 20 minutes in front of you whilst explaining what was going on. So if I come out here, hit F5, there we go. I'm in PowerPoint with all the capabilities that you saw me just create. It really is amazingly straightforward to do, and it just brings sort of the enormous capabilities of what Openbox has done, and those financial models just brings them out and allows you to share them with other people, put them in your presentations. There is actually one other way you can do it. You can take a code and embed it in your website. So if you had a model you wanted to appear on your website, then you could do that as well, and all this capability would be available for anyone who visits you there. So I'm going to stop there because I've gone too long and too quickly, I suspect. So there'll be lots of questions, both for me and for Iain. So we'll take a pause, and Aaron, if there are any questions come in, then we'd be more than happy to take them now.
Sounds good. So the first question we had was from from Johnny. He said, which version of Squirrel is currently being used in this demonstration?
The version of Squirrel is the latest version, which is our 1.9 version, which was released about sort of three weeks ago or so. But everything you've seen today is possible in pretty much any version of Squirrel. But this is the latest version 1.9.
Okay. And the next question we have is, how was the name Squirrel originally? How did you come up with it?
That's an interesting question. The name Squirrel came from the fact that it was a code name to start with, and it was someone was developing it. They decided they wanted to try it and developed it on the side, so it was a secret project. So they called it Secret Squirrel, and so the code name became Squirrel. And the curse of code names is all too often you realize that changing them is harder than finding a new one. So it became Squirrel. We have thought about changing it a number of times, but every day that passes, it's harder to do.
I like the name Squirrel. Next question is a little bit more complicated. Is it possible to customize the graphs / tabs? We want to see colors, for example.
So yes, there are endless sort of customization capabilities in terms of. I mean, if you're still seeing my screen, am I still sharing?
Yep.
Yes, I am. Then if you come down here, you can see there are ways of alerting, so I can change the chart colors here, either just statically or based on alerts. You can, there's just so many different things. All these components, you've got components which I can put backgrounds on to change colors. We've got the text color, so you can change just about everything. But the key thing is you change everything, and you can statically change it, but you can change it, as you saw, based on a piece of text in the spreadsheet. And so then you can calculate anything you want to happen at any point you want based on what's happening in the model, which is the real key to it.
Okay. Next one is, how do you compare two different scenarios with variances?
So if you wanted to do that, what you would do is you would add some logic in your spreadsheet, which showed the side-by-side calculations. And I'll hand over to Iain in a minute, and you can talk about how you might do that in the Openbox model. But when you've got it in Squirrel, you would just literally, let's say Openbox didn't do it, and I'll let you explain that. But then I would just open up another sheet, maybe have two different scenarios, and copy them side by side, and then you could compare them. If you wanted to have them to run the model and then have it side by side, you would have to do a little more work inside Squirrel. But Squirrel can, one of the things we didn't look at, what you've got here is we've got these sort of functions which go over and above spreadsheet logic. So we've got a component called the data mover. So you could have a button that said play around with it, play around, push, okay, I'll capture that, then play around, push, capture that as well, and then be able to graph those side by side. So you could do, we saw a lot of the sliders obviously allow you to do sensitivity analysis, but with a little extra work, you could have sort of multiple scenarios displayed at once and give a variance between them, which would typically be hard inside a spreadsheet, because it's always recalculating everything and you need two sets of inputs. But with Squirrel, you can do that quite easily.
Let's quickly check. Oh, this is a question just in general for either you or Iain, which is we have a participant that joined late and they're just wondering where they could find the recorded version of this session.
Yeah, so we're recording this session, and once it's been processed by Zoom, we'll send a link out to everyone who registered for the webinar.
Yeah. This next question, let me just make sure I understand it right. They're wondering if there is a small business version of the software of Squirrel.
For Squirrel, there's a free version of Squirrel. So if you come and register on our website, which is squirrel365.io, then you can download everything you've seen today and use it. And that gives you as many personal projects as you want. So you can save them to the project manager, but it starts with one shared project. So almost everything. The only thing that wouldn't be included that is the loading and saving of scenarios. Everything else you've seen today, you could take an Openbox model, create your own model, publish it, and share it with the free version. So it's very, very cheap to get started, i.e. free, and then it's relatively low pricing to add more projects or move to the higher version, which gives you things like that scenario loading.
Okay. Next we have how to manage model version. If a deck is already ready in terms of format, can we just import the new model and it will update the data presented according to the model format did not change?
So yes, there are. You could, if there was a different set, if you took a different set of numbers in the spreadsheet, then yes, if you could say re-import the spreadsheet, and that would update all the data. You have to be, the only thing you have to be careful of is obviously if that changes some of the, like if this data is, if you've added it, Squirrel can't keep up to date with sort of like you've changed it outside, and you might need to rebind some of the components. But if the structure of the spreadsheet is the same, then yes, you can change the data to your heart's content, re-import it, and have it have the new data reflected.
Thank you.
And indeed, that's a way that, I mean, in a much simpler case than an Openbox model, some people have sort of dashboards that show sort of, I don't know, key performance indicators of their business, just so that people can come and have a look at it. And they'll typically update that by re-importing the spreadsheet and then republishing the Squirrel model, the Squirrel project. And so, yeah, that's a way to do that for sure.
This next question is for Iain. I had a private DM asking where they could find out more about Openbox.
So if you go to our website, which is openboxmodels.com, you can find a link to some videos explaining more about it, showing you how to do things with it. So how to build a project finance model in 20 minutes is one of our popular ones. Also a link to download the software, so you can get a free 45-day trial of it from there. So just to the website, openboxmodels.com, put that in the chat. And that will give you, oops. just put that link in the chat there. That will give you all the information that you'd like. And just, email. They have a contact button on there, and that comes straight to me. So just email anytime with questions.
So I just noticed there are a couple of, most people have been questions in the chat, but there are a couple have come in the Q&A panel. And Paul and Jason have basically asked the same question, which is about macros. Now, the way that Squirrel works, we don't support macros. You can't run macros in Squirrel. So if you have macros in your spreadsheet, then you can't use those in Squirrel. There are ways you can do similar things in Squirrel, and the data mover was an example of that I just showed you. And so if there are things that you want to do with macros, then I'm all ears as to what those are, because there are ways that you can do it today, and we're always looking to make sure we keep up with that. The issue for us is that the VBA engine that runs macros is, I mean, you can't run them in Excel on the web. They're a non-web technology, and Squirrel is very definitely a web technology. So we have to find other ways of doing it. But in many cases, we can find a different way of doing it. So happy to chat to people who want to know more about those things.
The question we had regarding Squirrel is, you said there's an add-on for PowerPoint. We had a attendee asking, it was also impossible to embed it into things such as SharePoint and Teams. So
yes, you can, a slightly different way. There's no add-in for SharePoint and Teams, but as I said before, if you go to the project manager, you saw that I've stopped sharing that, but that share window had a PowerPoint. You could copy the PowerPoint ID, you could copy the web link, but the third thing was an embed code, so you can actually get a piece of HTML. Well, in fact, sometimes just the web link will allow you to embed in Teams or SharePoint, but if you want to embed in something like WordPress or another content management system, then there's also an iframe code for doing that. So basically, wherever you have web content and it'll accept a web link, then yes, you can embed it there as well.
Okay. Next question is for Iain. They're asking, what can they do in regards to training on how to use Openbox? Are there any resources they can use to learn how to use it?
So yeah, so we have a free course, which again is linked to from the website, and that shows you how to build a model from scratch. Takes you through sort of a 10-minute demonstration of doing that, and has little videos that show you how to do key tasks. So how to bring in data, how to repeat something for a whole repeat a section of your model. We find people doing that a lot. Please, here's a bunch of calculations. Please do this for the 10 countries I operate in, and then add it up. How to output to in a format that's useful for other for visualization tools, that sort of thing. So all sorts of things that you might want to do with Openbox. And again, that's linked to from the website, but actually I'm just going to put in the chat a direct link. Let me just get that up, make sure I've got it right. Just stick this in the chat. Yeah. So that's our free training course.
Okay. Next question is for Squirrel. It is. Oh, let me just quickly find it. It is. How is the data stored and secured? Because some models require client sensitive information. So how do you make sure that it's stored safely?
Right. So there are a number of layers. So when you save it, so then the option I showed you there, you save to the Squirrel cloud. And that is when it's saved up to our cloud, it's encrypted. It's encrypted at rest. It's only accessible through that link. The link is unguessable, but people can copy it around. So on top of that, you can actually put a password into the project itself, so that someone wouldn't be able to see anything. And the first thing it does is ask for the password and then loads itself up. So those are the two ways of doing it inside the Squirrel cloud. But if you'd really sort of really been paying attention, and when I said publish, I picked the publish to cloud option. There is also with the there's a publish locally, which will actually take everything that you the Squirrel model and package it up as a set of web content that you can then be responsible for deploying. So we've got customers like the US Navy are a customer of ours, and obviously nothing goes outside their firewall, and so they host it all internally. So if you want, you can take it to the nth degree by doing that. Although saving to the Squirrel cloud is very secure in its own right.
Okay. Conscious it's now 2 p.m., but we do have, I think, about 3 more questions. You guys are fine to go ahead with those?
Yeah, no, yeah, I will. I'm happy. If people want to know more, I'm happy to stay on. Yes, for sure.
Okay. Next, we have as a chart dropdown is now driving something into the model, i.e., cache your customers. What formula is now in the Openbox model? Standard Excel. So you can separate Excel from Squirrel in the future.
So that's a very good question. And so what I didn't show you is I can take once I've made changes in the spreadsheet in Squirrel, I can then say file export. So I can export that back out to an XLSX file, and then you can talk more about this, but you can then read that back into Openbox. Now, what I don't know, and I don't know Iain, to what extent you know, but those customizations that I have made in Squirrel, how easy or difficult it is to persist those while still updating in Openbox. Yeah. That would be a question, I guess.
Yeah. So you can. So essentially, when you create an Openbox file, you have the sheets that Openbox itself creates, and you can add additional sheets. And I'll link those together. And Openbox will just leave those additional sheets alone.
Perfect.
It won't attempt to process them, but it will keep them in the model if you make changes to the sort of the main bits of the model.
Right. Excellent. So that's perfect. So it sounds like as long as you keep your Squirrel logic in a separate sheet as I did there, then it all work well, which is good.
Yeah.
Next question you have is, what about data scenarios? Is it the same as for macros?
Yes, so scenarios, again, that's the functionality around the edges of Excel, whether that be things like data scenarios, running macros, the what if analyzers, that are they're essentially sort of programs that are running typically in VBA or some sort of similar environment. None of those are directly imported into Squirrel. Now, having said that, things like data scenarios, in the future, we won't do it in exactly the same way, but in the future, we may be able to read that out of the Excel file. Today, you would have to rebuild your data scenarios inside Squirrel, but as I say, there are a number of techniques for being able to do that. So you could have a scenario capability. I mean, very much an extension of what you saw. All I was doing today was saving different scenarios for presentation. But there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to say, I want to highlight 2 of those and see them side by side in a Squirrel model. So there are ways of doing that. It just doesn't come in this sort of seamless transition. Really, what you're getting out of the Openbox model into Squirrel is the logic of the spreadsheet and the formulas in the spreadsheet. Anything else, we'll have to find another way of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Donald, is it worth talking a little bit about the scenario sheet, or the sheet with the scenarios on it, just to show?
Yes, so I didn't. Yes, absolutely, because Openbox does some of that for you.
Yeah. So see, I can share my screen here. Oh, okay. Donald, would you mind making me the host just for a minute, because I can't.
Goodness, how do I do that? Do I just have to
click in my name and click more? Oh no, hang on.
Oh yeah, you got it. Make host. There we go.
Very much. All right, let me just share my screen. So if everybody can see that. So one of the things that goes in an Openbox model, a standard is a number of, on the input sheet is a number of scenarios. And so each input here, let's pick one that might actually vary. Okay, so CMO salary, you have 3 different values for that. And you have a chooser, a picker. So you can pick which scenario you want. And that's just driven by one cell. So Donald, I imagine you could control that one cell from within Squirrel and have a little drop down in Squirrel that says, actually, I want to have base case 2 or base case 3 or something, or I want to have, some additional.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that would flip this cell here, which is F4, and that would choose a different scenario from here. So you can kind of have that comes. That's much easier to do with an Openbox model than normally. It doesn't require any VBA either. Pass back to you.
Okay, and I think the last question we have is interesting. It says, now as the engagement of Openbox and Squirrel is quite perfect, will there be a marriage and therefore maybe a Squirrel add-on implemented into Openbox in the foreseeable future?
So as we've been going through this what's the right word? As we have been creating this webinar and going through what we were going to show, Iain and I have both been saying, "Oh, if we did this and if we did that." So there are many points that you could, even up to and including the idea of a button in Openbox which said, "Yeah, just create me a basic Squirrel project," and sort of. So it's very early days. This is the first interaction between the 2 companies, and to a large extent, this is in your hands, the people on this webinar. If you guys use these tools together. And say, listen, it'd be great if they work better together, then that's great pressure. If none of you use it, then we'll probably go our separate ways and find different people to use our product. So yes, no pressure, but it's over to you to see what you can do. But no, there's lots of possibilities. Joking aside, to do more from the 2 products together.
Yeah, no, we talked about quite a few things. Sort of, because one of the things I think is sort of Openbox can tell you what different bits of the spreadsheet are, and that might be quite useful to sort of get yourself started when creating a Squirrel view, or as Donald said, there's all sorts of things, and I think in maybe dating rather than engagement. I don't know at the moment. That's Sebastian, but yeah, we've got lots of ideas.
Okay, I think if I'm correct, that is the end of the questions.
Well, look, I think then just thank everyone for coming. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.